Chosen one, this is your confirmation. Do not leave this season yet. What God is preparing for you is far closer than you think. There is a peculiar kind of pain that comes when people attack your name. It is different from the pain of failure, different from the pain of loss, and even different from the pain of being rejected. When someone attacks your name, they are not merely criticizing something you have done. They are attempting to redefine who you are. They are trying to place a label upon your character and persuade others to see you through that label. Most of us instinctively want to fight back when this happens. We want to explain ourselves, defend ourselves, and set the record straight. There is nothing strange about that reaction. Human beings are social creatures. We care about how we are perceived, because relationships depend upon trust, and trust depends upon reputation. Yet there is a danger hidden within this natural response. If we are not careful, we begin to believe that our worth depends entirely upon the opinions of other people. This is where we must pause and ask a deeper question. Why do attacks on our name hurt so much? Part of the answer is psychological. Human beings have a profound desire to be known and understood. We want others to see us as we truly are. When someone spreads falsehoods about us, it creates a gap between reality and perception. We know who we are, yet suddenly we find ourselves confronted by an image of ourselves that someone else has created. The frustration comes from feeling powerless to control that image. But there is also a philosophical and spiritual dimension to this struggle. The truth is that every person lives between two identities. There is the identity given by the crowd, and there is the identity grounded in truth. The crowd's opinion can change in a moment. One day they celebrate you, the next day they question you. History is filled with examples of individuals who were praised one season and condemned the next. Public opinion is often unstable because it is built upon limited information, shifting emotions, and personal biases. Truth, however, is not unstable. Truth does not change because someone dislikes you. Truth does not weaken because rumors become popular. Truth remains what it is, regardless of how many people choose to ignore it. This is why attacks often reveal more about the attacker than the target. People frequently criticize what they do not fully understand. Sometimes they project their fears onto others. Sometimes they misinterpret motives because they are viewing a situation through the lens of their own experiences. And sometimes they simply repeat stories without ever examining whether those stories are true. None of this excuses harmful behavior, but it does help explain it. Consider for a moment how often great people throughout history were misunderstood. Innovators were called foolish before they were called brilliant. Leaders were accused of weakness before they were recognized for wisdom. Individuals who challenged accepted ideas were frequently attacked long before they were wrecked. This pattern appears again and again because human beings often resist what they cannot immediately categorize. The same thing can happen in your own life. If you are committed to growth, if you are pursuing a meaningful purpose, if you refuse to conform to every expectation placed upon you, there will inevitably be people who misunderstand your intentions. Some may question your motives. Others may criticize your decisions. A few may even attempt to damage your reputation. Yet not every attack deserves your energy. One of the greatest signs of maturity is learning the difference between protecting your integrity and obsessively defending your image. Integrity concerns who you actually are. Image concerns what people happen to think about you. The first deserves your attention. The second can easily become a trap. The person who spends all their time chasing public approval becomes a prisoner of public opinion. Their peace rises and falls with every compliment and every criticism. But the person who is rooted in truth develops a different kind of stability. They understand that while they cannot control every story told about them, they can control the character they demonstrate each day. And over time, reality has a remarkable way of revealing itself. The attack may be loud, but truth is patient. The accusation may spread quickly, but truth has endurance. False narratives often depend upon constant reinforcement, while truth simply waits to be discovered. So before you allow criticism to define you, remember this: Your value is not determined by the loudest voice in the room. It is determined by the truth of who you are and the integrity with which you live. Because in the end, a lie must keep running to survive. But truth can stand still and still win. One of the most difficult lessons a person can learn is that being misunderstood does not mean being wrong. In fact, some of the most significant moments of growth occur precisely when others fail to recognize what is happening within us. There is a tendency in human nature to assume that if enough people believe something, it must be true. Yet history, philosophy, and everyday experience all remind us that popularity and truth are not the same thing. When your name is under attack, the immediate temptation is to make everyone understand. You want to gather evidence, present your case, and convince every critic that they have judged you unfairly. But there is a problem with living this way. It places your peace in the hands of people who may never be interested in understanding you at all. Think about how much of life is spent seeking approval. From childhood, we learn to read the reactions of others. We notice praise and criticism. We adjust our behavior based on acceptance and rejection. There is nothing inherently wrong with this. Healthy relationships require feedback. Communities function through mutual respect. But somewhere along the way, many people begin to confuse approval with identity. They begin to believe that they are only as valuable as the opinions surrounding them. This is where the deeper issue emerges. When a person's sense of worth depends entirely upon external validation, they become vulnerable to every changing wind of public opinion. Compliments lift them higher than they should go, and criticism pushes them lower than they should fall. Their emotional stability becomes dependent upon circumstances they cannot control. Yet there is another way to live. A mature person gradually learns to distinguish between reputation and character. Reputation is what people think about you. Character is what you actually are. Reputation exists in the minds of others. Character exists within the reality of your choices. The distinction is crucial because reputation can be manipulated, distorted, and misunderstood. Character cannot. Someone may spread a rumor about you, but they cannot force you to become the person they describe. Someone may question your motives, but they cannot alter the truth of your intentions. Someone may attack your name, but they cannot reach into your soul and rewrite your character. This realization changes everything. When you understand this, you stop living as though every accusation requires a response. You begin to recognize that not every battle deserves your attention. Some conflicts are won, not through argument, but through consistency. Some criticisms are answered not through explanation, but through time. There is something profoundly powerful about a person who remains steady while others attempt to provoke them. Such a person understands that truth possesses a strength that falsehood lacks. A lie often depends upon emotion, repetition, and reaction. Truth depends only upon reality, and reality has a way of enduring. This does not mean criticism should always be ignored. Wisdom requires self-examination. Sometimes our critics reveal flaws we genuinely need to address. Sometimes uncomfortable feedback becomes the very tool that helps us grow. The challenge is learning how to separate constructive criticism from destructive accusation. Constructive criticism seeks understanding and improvement. Destructive accusation seeks damage and control. One helps you become better. The other attempts to convince you that you are worse than you truly are. The difference matters. Many people spend years carrying labels that were never meant to define them. A careless comment from a teacher, a false accusation from a colleague, a betrayal from a friend, or a judgment from a stranger can become a burden they continue to carry, long after the moment has passed. Eventually, they stop fighting the label and begin accepting it as reality. But no human being should allow another person's opinion to become the foundation of their identity. The strongest individuals are not those who never face criticism. They are those who refuse to let criticism determine who they are. They understand that identity must be anchored in something deeper than public approval. Otherwise, life becomes a never-ending chase for acceptance. And acceptance is a poor substitute for truth. As we continue, we must consider an even greater reality. If human judgment is often incomplete and unreliable, then where can we find a perspective that sees beyond appearances? Where can we find a standard that is not influenced by rumors, assumptions, or popular opinion? The answer begins with recognizing that there is a vision greater than human perception, a wisdom that sees beneath the surface, beyond the masks, and into the heart itself. Because while people may only see fragments of your story, there is one who sees the entire picture, and that changes everything. Remember this: the crowd can only judge what is visible, but truth begins where appearances end. If people could see every chapter of your story, they might speak about you very differently. The problem is that most judgments are made from fragments. Human beings rarely possess the full picture. They see a moment and assume they know the entire journey. They witness a decision and believe they understand the motive behind it. They hear a rumor and treat it as though it were evidence. Yet reality is always deeper than appearance. This is why the first witness that rises in your defense is not your words, your arguments, or your explanations. It is your character. Character is one of the most misunderstood concepts in modern life. Many people think character is something you display when others are watching. In truth, character is revealed most clearly when nobody is watching at all. It is the collection of choices made in private, the habits repeated in silence, and the values maintained when there is no applause to reward them. A reputation can be built in months. Character is built over years. A reputation can be given by others. Character must be developed from within. A reputation may rise and fall with circumstances. Character remains when circumstances change. This is why character possesses a unique authority. It speaks with a voice that cannot easily be silenced. Long after arguments have ended and accusations have faded, character continues to testify. Think about how trust is formed. We do not trust people because they make a single impressive statement. We trust them because their actions repeatedly align with their words. Consistency creates credibility. Over time, people begin to recognize patterns. They see honesty demonstrated again and again. They witness integrity under pressure. They observe kindness when there is nothing to gain from it. Eventually, a person's life begins speaking louder than any defense they could offer. This is why some attacks feel so frustrating. When your name is questioned, you want immediate vindication. You want the truth to be recognized today. You want misunderstandings corrected now. Yet character often works on a different timetable. Character is patient. It does not rush to prove itself, because it does not depend upon instant approval. Instead, it quietly continues doing what is right, day after day, choice after choice, decision after decision. At first, this can feel unsatisfying. Human nature craves quick resolutions. We want justice delivered immediately and truth acknowledged without delay. But reality rarely unfolds that way. More often, truth reveals itself gradually through the evidence of a life consistently lived. There is a reason false accusations often struggle to survive over long periods of time. Lies require constant maintenance. They depend upon selective information and emotional reactions. Character, on the other hand, creates its own evidence. Every honorable action becomes another witness. Every ethical decision becomes another piece of testimony. Eventually, people begin noticing the contradiction between the accusation and the reality before them. They see someone accused of selfishness, consistently serving others. They see someone accused of dishonesty, repeatedly choosing truth. They see someone accused of weakness, continuing to endure challenges with courage. And little by little, the false narrative begins to collapse under the weight of reality. This does not mean everyone will change their opinion. Some individuals become deeply attached to their judgments. Admitting they were wrong would require humility, and humility is often difficult. Yet the goal of character has never been universal approval. The goal of character is faithfulness to what is right. That distinction is important because many people unknowingly sacrifice character in an attempt to protect reputation. They compromise principles to gain acceptance. They abandon convictions to avoid criticism. They become so focused on controlling how they are perceived that they lose sight of who they are becoming. But the truly wise person understands that reputation is a shadow, while character is the different substance casting it. Protect the substance, and the shadow will eventually take care of itself. This perspective requires courage. It means continuing to act with integrity, even when integrity appears unrewarded. It means choosing honesty when dishonesty would be easier. It means remaining faithful to your values, even when those values are misunderstood. Such choices rarely receive immediate recognition, yet they possess tremendous power because they shape not only how others see you, but who you actually become. And that is the deeper victory. The greatest achievement is not convincing everyone that you are a good person. The greatest achievement is becoming one. When that happens, something remarkable occurs. Your life begins telling a story that no accusation can permanently erase. The evidence accumulates. The testimony grows stronger. The witness becomes impossible to ignore. And yet, as powerful as character is, it is not the only witness standing in your defense. There is another voice that speaks on your behalf, a witness built from every struggle you have survived, every obstacle you have overcome, and every lesson written into the journey itself. Because your character tells people who you are, but your journey reveals what brought you here, and that witness has a story of its own. There is a fascinating truth about human nature. People often judge a person by a single moment, while life itself tells a story through many moments. An accusation focuses on one event. A journey reveals a pattern, and patterns are often far more reliable than isolated incidents. This is why the second witness that rises in your defense is your journey. Your journey is more than a collection of experiences. It is evidence. It is a record of where you have been, what you have endured, and who you have become along the way. While critics may focus on a snapshot, your journey presents the entire film. Consider how easily people overlook the distance someone has traveled. They see the person standing before them today, but they do not see the fears that were conquered, the failures that were survived, or the sacrifices that were made in silence. They see the outcome, but not the process. They see the strength, but not the struggle that produced it. Yet the process matters. In many ways, the process matters more than the outcome, because it reveals the reality of a person's character. Success can sometimes be accidental. Growth never is. Growth requires persistence. It requires endurance. It requires the willingness to continue moving forward when every reason seems to suggest turning back. That is why your journey possesses such powerful testimony. Every obstacle you overcame speaks. Every setback you survived speaks. Every lesson learned through hardship speaks. And together, these experiences form a witness that no critic can easily dismiss. Think for a moment about the people you admire most. Rarely do we respect them because their lives were easy. We respect them because they endured difficulty without surrendering to it. We admire individuals who faced adversity and emerged wiser, stronger, and more compassionate than before. There is something deeply meaningful about resilience, because resilience reveals what comfort never can. Anyone can appear confident when circumstances are favorable. Anyone can appear strong when life is easy. The true measure of a person often emerges when pressure arrives. Difficulties expose priorities. Challenges reveal convictions. Trials uncover the values that lie beneath the surface. This is why your journey matters so much. The hardships you have faced are not merely unfortunate interruptions in your story. They are part of the evidence that supports your story. Every challenge became an opportunity to reveal who you really are. Of course, this does not mean every chapter of the journey has been noble or perfect. No honest person would claim such a thing. Human beings are imperfect. We make mistakes. We take wrong turns. We experience seasons of weakness and confusion. Yet even these chapters can become part of the testimony. One of the greatest misconceptions in life is the belief that credibility comes from perfection. In reality, Credibility often comes from transformation. People are inspired not by flawless individuals, but by individuals who grow. A person who learns from failure speaks with authority. A person who rises after falling speaks with authenticity. A person who confronts weakness and develops strength speaks with wisdom. The journey itself becomes proof that change is possible. This is why accusations often struggle to define a person permanently. An accusation attempts to freeze someone in a single moment. Growth refuses to remain frozen. Growth continues moving. Growth continues learning. Growth continues becoming. And as life moves forward, the journey begins revealing truths that were invisible before. The individual once called incapable develops competence. The person labeled weak discovers resilience. The one who was underestimated achieves things no one expected. Time has a remarkable way of exposing shallow judgments. What appeared obvious at first often proves incomplete later. What seemed like failure sometimes becomes preparation. What looked like a setback may eventually reveal itself as a turning point. This perspective changes how we view our own struggles as well. Many people carry shame over difficult chapters in their lives. They wish they could erase certain experiences. They wish they could remove painful seasons from their story. Yet those very experiences may become the strongest parts of their testimony. The struggle taught perseverance. The disappointment taught wisdom. The hardship taught compassion. The challenge developed strength. Without those chapters, the person standing here today would not exist. So when someone attacks your name, remember that they are often speaking about a fraction of the story. Your journey contains far more evidence than any accusation can capture. It contains years of lessons, growth, endurance, and transformation. It contains proof that cannot be summarized in a rumor or reduced to a label. And still, as powerful as your journey is, there remains a witness greater than your character and greater than your experiences. For character reveals your integrity, and your journey reveals your growth. But there is a perspective that sees beyond both. There is a witness who was present before the journey began, who remained through every struggle, and who understands the truth of your life more completely than anyone else ever could. Because when human judgment reaches its limit, a greater judgment remains, and that final witness changes everything. And this brings us to the third witness, the witness that stands above every accusation, beyond every misunderstanding, and outside the limitations of human judgment. It is one thing for your character to speak on your behalf. It is another for your journey to testify to your growth. But there are moments in life when even those seem insufficient. There are times when people refuse to acknowledge evidence. There are seasons when misunderstandings persist, despite years of integrity and perseverance. In such moments, we are confronted with a profound reality. Human judgment has limits. No person, no matter how intelligent or observant, can fully know another human heart. We can observe actions. We can interpret words. We can make educated assumptions about motives. But assumptions are not certainty. The inner world of a person, their intentions, struggles, fears, hopes, and convictions, remains largely hidden from everyone except God. This truth should humble us. Many conflicts arise because people assume they know more than they actually do. They interpret behavior without understanding circumstances. They assign motives without possessing evidence. They form conclusions based on fragments, and then defend those conclusions as though they were complete knowledge. Yet God sees what human beings cannot. He sees not only what you did, but why you did it. He sees not only your actions, but your intentions. He sees not only the public chapter, but the private struggle. Nothing is hidden from his perspective. This is why divine judgment differs so dramatically from human judgment. Human beings often focus on appearances, because appearances are all they can see. God examines the deeper reality beneath appearances. Where people see a moment, God sees a lifetime. Where people see an event, God sees a story. Where people see failure, God may see a lesson that is still unfolding. This perspective offers tremendous comfort when your name is under attack. If your identity depends entirely upon human approval, then every criticism becomes a threat. Every misunderstanding becomes a crisis. Every false accusation becomes a source of anxiety. But when your identity is grounded in God's knowledge of who you truly are, criticism loses much of its power. That does not mean criticism stops hurting. It means criticism no longer determines your worth. There is an important distinction between pain and identity. Pain is often unavoidable. Human beings are affected by rejection, betrayal, and misunderstanding. Even the strongest individuals feel those wounds. But identity concerns something deeper. Identity answers the question, who am I? And that question cannot safely be entrusted to the ever-changing opinions of other people. People may misunderstand you today and praise you tomorrow. They may criticize you in one season and celebrate you in another. If your identity rises and falls with their opinions, you will never find lasting stability. But God's perspective remains constant. This is one of the recurring themes throughout Scripture. Again and again, we encounter individuals whose names were attacked, whose motives were questioned, and whose reputations were challenged. Consider how often faithful people were misunderstood before they were vindicated. Their stories remind us that truth and recognition do not always arrive at the same moment. Sometimes there is a delay between the two. Sometimes a person must continue walking faithfully, even when others refuse to see clearly. That waiting can be difficult. We naturally want immediate justice. We want every false statement corrected. We want every misunderstanding resolved. Yet wisdom often requires patience, not because truth is weak, but because truth does not operate according to human timetables. God is never rushed by confusion. He is never pressured by public opinion. He is never intimidated by false narratives. While people argue over appearances, he remains anchored in reality, and reality eventually prevails. This does not always happen in the dramatic ways we imagine. Sometimes vindication comes through changed circumstances. Sometimes it comes through revealed facts. Sometimes it arrives quietly as people begin recognizing what was true all along. And sometimes the greatest vindication is not external at all. Sometimes it is the peace that comes from knowing you have remained faithful despite opposition. There is remarkable freedom in reaching the point where you no longer need every person to approve of you. Not because you have become indifferent, but because you have become grounded. You understand that your value is not determined by applause and cannot be destroyed by accusation. That kind of confidence is not arrogance. Arrogance depends upon believing you are superior to others. True confidence depends upon knowing who you are before God. And when a person reaches that place, they become extraordinarily resilient. They stop wasting energy trying to control every opinion. They stop chasing validation from those determined to withhold it. They stop allowing false narratives to define their future. Instead, they continue forward with quiet strength, trusting that the one who sees all things also knows all things. Because in the end, the most important verdict is not the one spoken by the crowd. It is the one spoken by the God who knows the truth completely. And when God stands as your witness, no accusation can have the final word. When we look back over everything we have explored, a remarkable pattern begins to emerge. The attack came first. The accusations were spoken. The doubts were planted. The rumors spread. For a time, it may have seemed as though those voices would define the story, yet they did not. Why? Because the truth was never standing alone. Your character spoke, your journey spoke, and God himself spoke. Together, these witnesses revealed something that every attack tries to hide. Truth has a longer life than falsehood. This leads us to a question that is rarely discussed. What happens after the attack? What happens when the accusations lose their power? What happens when you stop allowing other people's opinions to determine your identity? Many people assume the greatest victory is proving everyone wrong. They imagine satisfaction comes from watching critics admit their mistakes or seeing opponents acknowledge the truth. Yet life often teaches a different lesson. The greatest victory is not external vindication. the greatest victory is internal freedom. Think about how much energy people spend trying to manage perceptions. They replay conversations in their minds. They worry about what others are saying. They obsess over misunderstandings they cannot control. Day after day, they carry the burden of defending themselves against every criticism. It is exhausting, and more importantly, it is distracting. A person consumed with protecting their image often loses sight of their purpose. Instead of building, they are defending. Instead of growing, they are reacting. Instead of moving forward, they are standing still, fighting battles that never truly end. But something changes when you realize that your identity does not depend upon public approval. Suddenly, you no longer need to win every argument. You no longer need to answer every accusation. You no longer need to convince every skeptic. You are free to focus on what actually matters. This freedom is one of life's greatest gifts, because it allows you to direct your energy toward purpose rather than conflict. Consider for a moment how different your future could be if you stopped measuring your worth by the opinions of others. How much creativity has been lost because people feared criticism? How many dreams have remained unrealized because someone was afraid of being misunderstood? How many opportunities have been missed because a person spent more time defending their past than building their future? The answer is far too many. Yet every attack presents a choice. You can allow criticism to become a prison, or you can allow it to become preparation. You can allow opposition to discourage you, or you can allow it to strengthen you. You can allow false narratives to define your story, or you can continue writing the next chapter. The choice belongs to you. This is one of the hidden truths about adversity. Difficult experiences often produce unexpected strength. The very challenges that were intended to stop you can become the experiences that prepare you. The criticism that once wounded you can teach resilience. The misunderstanding that once frustrated you can teach patience. The opposition that once seemed unfair can develop wisdom. Over time, you begin to see that not every battle was an interruption. Some battles were training. Some struggles were preparation. Some hardships were shaping you into the person you needed to become. And perhaps that is why so many of life's greatest transformations begin with opposition. When everything is easy, growth is often limited. When everything is comfortable, deeper strengths remain undiscovered. But pressure reveals potential. Difficulty uncovers courage. Challenges expose abilities that might otherwise remain hidden. The attack was never the end of the story. It was simply one chapter, and chapters do not determine books. What determines the book is what comes next. Will you remain trapped by what others said about you, or will you move forward, guided by what you know to be true? Will you continue reliving old accusations, or will you invest your energy in the future that still lies ahead? Will you allow temporary voices to define a permanent identity, or will you stand firmly upon the truth revealed by your character, your journey, and your faith? Because ultimately, every person must choose which voice they will trust. The voice of accusation always speaks of limitation. The voice of truth speaks of possibility. The voice of accusation points backward. The voice of truth points forward. And the future belongs to those who have the courage to keep walking toward it. So if your name has been attacked, remember this: your responsibility is not to control every opinion. Your responsibility is to live truthfully, walk faithfully, and continue moving forward with confidence. The crowd may speak for a moment, but truth speaks for a lifetime. And when truth stands beside character, journey, and God, no attack can define the person you were created to become.